Welcome to Faith Fondue, a podcast featuring author and speaker Haley DeMaria and teacher and blogger Ann Strickers. Faith Fondue will feature a melting pot of topics ignited by a flame, our faith, and guided by the Holy Spirit. It is February 6th. This is Season 3 of Faith Fondue, Episode 2. We are in the 5th Sunday of Ordinary Time. And Anne, life is getting a little bit back to normal or ordinary for me after my January funk. How are you?
I'm good, Haley. Thank you. And I'm glad to hear that. You never want your friends. We all go in and out of the funks, right? So today, let's see what we have in store. Looks like we're going to be talking about this time of year in schools, which is admissions. I know you're in full swing there. I was able to get down to Monterey this last weekend for a golf tournament. I want to talk about a new name. I'm christened to the Washington football team. And I'm looking forward to talking about St. Scholastica. I think you raised some good questions, and I'll talk about milestones as kind of a spiritual practice. So tell us, Haley, so many people are familiar with the admissions process. It's fascinating, isn't it? We've been through it. Our people's children go through it. They're in it right now. So talk about this time of year.
Yeah, so I work in admissions at a local school here in Annapolis, and we are it is admission season. It is, when I'm thinking about the flame and what's hot this week, what's hot is that I worked most of the week. I was working all day on Saturday. I came home and did more work. I was working at night, pretty typical for anyone who works in education, I think. No complaints. I love it. It's fascinating. It's a really important task. And, especially this year, our school's in a situation where we have applicants that we're really going to want to take, but we just don't have space for them. And I think, certainly colleges find themselves in those situations. I think a lot of schools are these days. But it does give you some insight into, for example, what Edward's going through, my youngest son who's in his senior year, that process of applying and then just kind of waiting and wondering what's going on with your application. Well, on my side, I can tell you what's going on. We are looking at every single part of it. And, these are, I don't want to say life-changing. That sounds really dramatic, but, this is a big decision for, where families want to send their child to kindergarten. It's an important decision. I should put it that way. So we want to make sure we do a thorough job, especially when we know there's students we're not going to be able to take. But it's not much different, I think, whether it's preschool, kindergarten, high school, or college. It's a very thoughtful process, and just interesting to see how parents approach it, but really fascinating on the backside I feel really good about our process. I think we do a very holistic approach to looking at our students. It's not just numbers. It's certainly not test scores. We don't have any sort of admissions test. So anyway, it's fun. It's busy, but yeah. I love my work. I love my job, and I feel good about how we do things.
That's good. And, honestly, a shout out to people who work in admissions, because that has to be a grind. Just working in a school myself, where we probably get 3 to 4 applicants per position available, and we do interviews. We did interviews in person. I was in on the interview process. We do Zoom interviews, tours, you name it, just to share the message of the school. And then there's always a personal component. I was able to write a personal recommendation for a couple of friends whose children are seeking to be at certain schools, and how much it means to be able to advocate for someone, and tell a little bit about their story. So I know that I do. When you say it's thoughtful, I agree. I see that in our process too. So as difficult as the whole outcome may be, it's good to know there's good people behind it. So keep up the good work.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think it also helped bring me out of my January funk that I talked about last week. Because I was just busy. So who has time to be in a funk when you're busy? And 2, I spent yesterday with 16 kindergartners, or 16 4 and 5-year-olds reading. I was listening. They were listening to stories being read by our kindergarten teachers, and they were jumping in and being engaged. And let me tell you, if you're having a bad day, I know you teach high school. I spent a lot of time working in a high school as well. if you just need a smile, find a kindergarten class or find a little 2-year-old class. It'll make your day. So
That's awesome.
kudos
Yeah.
to all of our applicants also who kind of helped change my funk too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my students and I were in a funk part of this week because sometimes I think coming out of COVID, it's just a quieter group. They're a little more reluctant to share. And I deliberately planned a lesson plan on Friday where they are all speaking and talking to somebody different. And it was so good, so much more fun and enjoyable. And I said, when the teacher wins, everybody wins. So meaning I'm kind of this barometer. If it goes well, it's because they've gone well. I mean, it's gone well with them. So really just keep encouraging, older kids to just be who they are and share their points of view, because it shouldn't be, so different than kindergarten and first grade. I wish it wasn't, but we know the development of, young men and women and all that it takes.
I know,
It's hard.
but they still have that kindergartner in them. I see it even with my
Somewhere, I do
18-year-old,
too. I
right?
agree.
If you can bring that silly side out, that engaging side out, boy, there's nothing better as a teacher than seeing that side
So
of your
true.
students.
So true.
So fun for me this
well,
week. I was, didn't have much time. Of course, my husband loves to scroll through social media. He finds it highly entertaining. I enjoy it for certain things, but I don't spend as much time on it. But I did come across a video that I sent to you that I just found fascinating, and I know you were there. So there was a shot by Justin Spieth that I don't know where I thought he was going to hit it. I actually, and we can upload it so that our viewers can see it too, but he was walking to the edge of a cliff.
yeah.
And I thought he was going to hit it to the left, kind of back into the fairway where you could see it. And all of a sudden he goes to swing and sends it over what looks like a huge ravine, but really kind of a treacherous shot. But of course, this week is the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro Am. It's a golf tournament that my family certainly has always enjoyed. My cousins usually go up to watch. So I'm very familiar with it as a non-golfer. But tell me a little bit about what that was like.
Yeah, I'm impressed, Haley. That's some good knowledge right there.
Wow.
It is. It's formerly known as the Clam Bake, but you are absolutely right. It's a pro-am. So you have professionals and then amateurs. A number of these folks are CEOs or big-time business people that get invited, friends of players, whatnot, celebrities. There's a significant number of celebrities. I'll talk about a few of them. But so Jordan Spieth got really hot at the end of the round yesterday. So he's contending for the win, and it's because of gutsy shots like that, which are incredible. That one of the number one rules in golf is to play the ball as it lies. So you always have the option to fix the lie, to call an unplayable if it were, or do stroke and distance and you take a penalty. But he's the best of the best. So he makes that shot over the ravine. And yeah, the carry is remarkable. It's incredible. It's so fun to see that. They make it look, that's the greats. The greats make something look easy. And to see that is notable. So thank you, yes, for sharing that video. But it was, when you're there, what you're describing is you have the ocean, the Monterey Bay, and there are these whales that are swimming by. The weather here has been remarkable. It's been like no wind and very clear. And it's striking because I know in the rest of the country, there's ice, there's snow, there's storms. So it's this, it's probably intentional that they have it there just to show the beauty of this area of the Monterey Peninsula. And I thought your family had gone before. So my school is about an hour and 15 minutes from there. So I actually left after class on Friday and headed down. And it's such a treat because it is 2 hours from San Francisco. But once you're there, you're always like, why am I not here in this beautiful place more often? And there are 3 golf courses that the tournament is played on. The Monterey Peninsula is home to many golf courses because, again, the area is so perfect for it.
Okay, can I guess what the 3 are?
Yeah, please do. I'm super impressed.
So Pebble Beach.
Yes.
Cypress.
No.
And what about
Good.
What about Spyglass?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, 2 out of 3 is not bad for
Yeah.
someone who's literally never played golf.
I don't. No, it's excellent. You're right. Pebble Beach is the number 2 ranked course in the country for its beauty. It's not as difficult as Spyglass Hill, which is where I was on Friday. And then the third is Monterey Peninsula Golf Club, which is a private club. Cypress is very exclusive. It'd be interesting to look at the history of what they've had there, if anything. But that's like many people's favorite golf course. I've never played there. It is very exclusive, which a Notre Dame grad friend of mine who's a very talented and successful golf writer has said that he has a problem with that the best courses in this country are exclusive. It shouldn't be that way because it's not in Scotland, for example.
Right.
But my friend was volunteering for the week. And so and most people go to Pebble Beach because that's the one that's so iconic and beautiful and great to walk around.
And it's a public course, right? Isn't Pebble Beach public? Okay.
Yes, very good. Yes. It's pricey, but it's public. So you can walk the grounds and see the celebrities. And there's a fun just mix of different people. But we were so I got there later, obviously, because of teaching. And so the last groups were coming through. And I don't know if you've ever had this, but do certain like musical artists, like somehow they come up in my playlist where I'll kind of catch a certain artist and I'll start listening to him or her regularly. And for some reason, in the last 2 weeks, I've been listening to Darius Rucker. His song, so he was the head singer of Hootie and the Blowfish, which was very popular when we were in college, kind of defines that era. I saw them in New Orleans in concert when I lived in Louisiana with my housemates. I think his voice is incredible. I think they're very talented. And I've known that he's a golfer. He's been written up in kind of Sports Illustrated. He's a big kind of sports fan, right? He's kind of this, so everybody kind of knows who he is. Is that fair to say? Like, or familiar?
I would say so.
Our age?
Yeah. Yes, for sure.
Right. So he's not Hootie, but he's Darius Rucker, and he's now in the country music. Like that's where he's recording. Part of it I've heard is that there's just not like pure rock and roll. Like pop music has changed so much now that there's not like space for somebody with kind of a voice like his or Hootie and the Blowfish. Like they don't really know where to put a band like that. So a number of artists find success in country music. Yep. So that's where he is. He's an individual artist. And some of his songs I really like and some I don't. But recently I've liked all of his songs. So this is just a backdrop for I go to the tournament and the group that we're following, he's in the group and it's not crowded. You're up close and personal with these people. I'm talking maybe 5 feet from him and I'm looking at him and he looks at me like he knows, like we've met before. Like he gives you that look like, have we met? And I don't say anything. I don't say hello. I don't say, I love your music or this is a favorite song. And it's so not like me. And I'm so annoyed at myself because I think it's always great to affirm. I mean, you want celebrities to have their space, but at the same time, it's also great to engage and just say, thank you for your music. Or I love your voice. Nope, blew it. Multiple chances just to reach out. Didn't do it. So I'll have to go back next year.
That's okay. That's okay. It's, they put themselves out there at an event like this. They probably expect it. So maybe you caught him off guard and gave him the unexpected, and he's still wondering, I wonder why that girl didn't say anything.
I know, yeah. Bill Murray was in his grip, so Bill Murray kind of like commands attention and whatnot.
Interesting. But, so maybe he was hoping somebody would recognize him.
Well, he's hard on, and he's a very good golfer. He's plays to a 7, so fun to be out there. Always fun to see the beauty of the area, and none of it happens without these volunteers. So kudos to Leslie and all of these folks who, honestly work along. It's no small shift. And if it's raining, and then some years it's been pouring rain, all the more credit to these people. So
right. No, we've always talked about that. Events like this don't happen without hours and hours and hours from volunteers.
Yeah. So Haley, I have a question for you because this is related to the Washington football team announced their mascot now. Mm-hmm. So as people know, about 18 months ago, they relinquished the title Washington Redskins. They've been the Washington football team. The name has been, now they're the Washington Commanders. The name has been, I don't know how excited people are about that name. And it has an interesting, connection to the military or like, what is a commander and all these different questions. So I started to wonder, like, what if you don't like the name of your team or what if you don't like the color, like by name, I mean the mascot or the colors? And I thought about this because I don't like the color purple. And I know the Ravens are purple and black. Now, black and purple is kind of tough, but I've always wondered, if I was a Vikings fan, what would I do? I don't like purple and it's gold. Or what if I was a Washington Commanders fan and I don't like that name? What is your thought to all of that?
So I think when you're a real fan, you just go all in. At least that's been my approach. So I was never a big fan of purple growing up. I didn't dislike it, but I just had no thoughts about it. We have lived in, Maryland for now 18 years, and we are diehard Ravens fans. Certainly my
Yeah.
kids are. And again, their high school is purple also. So we've gone all in on purple. And whether I like the color or not, I love it now. I wear it. It's more the pride of supporting your team or your school than I think it is the color. I will say for me, nobody really buys purple, so it's always on sale, which I love. You can walk into a store and the purple section's on sale. So that's kind of nice. But I don't know. I think you just embrace it. Now, there's people who will complain about everything, and I have heard, certainly living in the DC area, a lot of comments, jokes, memes, some very clever takes on the name, appropriate and not. That's just going to happen. I think that's kind of the beauty of social media. People get very clever and probably, again, spend too much time throwing things out there. I think, like anything, this is the name. And if you are a true diehard Washington fan, then you're just going to go with it. And it is what it is. But we'll see. We'll see. Time will tell. I think some people, just as they held on to calling them the Redskins while they were the Washington football team, perhaps there will be some fans who continue to call it the Washington football team until Commanders takes over. Time will tell. There'll be an uproar. People will complain. You'll see a lot of posts about it. And then I think eventually 5-10 years from now, not my kids,
Yeah.
but my grandkids, they're not going to know anything different. So,
Yeah.
but it's a very strange thing to change a name, and it's almost like changing your identity. It was even strange for me, when I went from Haley Scott to Haley DeMaria. It's very strange, but after a while, that's who you are.
Yeah. I agree. And it's not uncommon, though. There are a number of schools in the country that are changing their name
Sure. Yes.
because they may have been named after someone who endorsed slavery or was involved in, unethical behaviors, eugenics, whatnot. I know it's also quite costly to do that, to change a name.
Absolutely.
So, for example, a friend went to Sir Francis Drake High School in Stan Anselmo. I don't know a lot about Sir Francis Drake and what he did that was problematic, but she was telling me just the legal cost. Then you have everything that goes with the school, letterhead,
Branding,
anything,
all of it.
website, all of it. And not that that's not, don't let, when we're teaching morality, don't let financial concerns dictate whether something's right or wrong. And I hope it doesn't come across that way. But here in San Francisco, the school board, which is there, we have an election coming up, by the way, in our city, because there's a vote to recall the DA and even the school board. They were going to rename an incredible number of schools, including Abraham Lincoln, including
Really?
Dianne Feinstein. Yes. And the decision was to not name schools after people, but after places of natural or historic interest. And that way you avoid, because at some point there's always going to be somebody that there's going to be something controversial. But in Oakland, recently they renamed a school after Barack Obama. There's a movement for Kamala Harris as the first, woman of color who's a vice president, and quick to change in a positive, what is seen as positive. But again, history, the arc of history, can be complex. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting because you're right. It's an investment, and an investment should never not happen at the cause of, doing what's
the right
right.
thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. But we'll see. Only time will tell about the
Yeah.
commanders.
I know. Yeah.
So,
So let's move
spiritual
on. Yeah.
stew. Yeah. So,
Tell me what's cooking.
I
Scholastica.
well, it's interesting. I was reading the Gospels for this upcoming week, and I saw that February 10th, upcoming this week, is the Feast of Saint Scholastica. Now, this is a saint I've never heard of before, ever. Sometimes I've heard of one or I don't know much about them, but I read this and I actually thought I'd read it wrong. I said, "Who is that?" So I know last year was, I spent some time learning more about the saints. I really
Yes.
liked that. So I will continue that. I think that's probably the
Good.
best thing about a resolution is not something that has a finite time, that it's something that really changes you and becomes part of your daily existence. So I did a little research into into Saint Scholastica. I always find the lives of saints super fascinating, and I also find I really challenge myself oftentimes when they are martyred to put myself in their position and think, would I do that? Am I capable of that? Do I have
Um,
such a strong faith that I would be willing to die for that? So that's my own little challenge that I have every time. Saint Scholastica, as far as I read, was not martyred, but she had a really interesting life. She is the patron saint of the Benedictine nuns. She is credited
okay.
with starting the Benedictine nuns and
Wow.
in Italy. It also says that she's the patron saint of education. Now, that didn't surprise me because Scholastica seemed clearly educational to me. It's one of the reasons I found her name so interesting and wanted to read more about her. So then, of course,
I
I
agree.
Googled patron saint of education, and she was nowhere to be found. So I don't think she, of course, you've got Elizabeth Ann Seton. There are a number
Yeah.
of saints that I think are more that we associate more with education than Saint Scholastica. Clearly, I've never associated her with education. I've never heard of her. But I thought that was interesting how she became the patron saint of something that other people don't really know she's the patron saint of. She's also the
Hmm.
patron saint of children or convolutions.
Convulsions?
So
Like,
convolutions. So I had to look
okay.
that up. So
Yeah.
that is like seizures
Oh,
and
convulsion, right? Isn't it
convulsions.
convulsion?
Yeah,
Yeah, you
convulsions.
had a
Okay, I had
convulsion.
the
Yeah.
wrong. Yeah,
Okay.
threw an extra letter in there. Convulsions, which I thought was interesting. So now I
Mm,
hopefully never need to pray for
yes.
convulsive. That's the word. Convulsive children. She is the patron
Okay.
saint of convulsive children. So kind of an interesting life, an interesting story with her brother Benedict, and
Yes.
kind of that famous story. Now, obviously not famous to me because I hadn't heard of her, of wanting to spend more time talking to her brother, who she only saw once a year. She didn't want him to leave, so she prayed to him not to leave. He still wanted to go. Prayed to God that he wouldn't leave, and all of a sudden, a big storm came. So you know, I have lots of thoughts and comments on some of these events, but enjoyed reading about her, and we'll probably spend a little more time digging in deep because I think I'm just scratching the top of why she was ordained or not ordained. Boy, I'm definitely getting
Um,
my words rhyme
Beatified,
to me.
canonized,
Canonized as a
canonized.
saint.
Yep. Super interesting. First of all, nice work on the fact checking. I think that's always good to, do a little research. If you had asked me, Haley, if I had once you said she was Benedict's sibling, then like there was a ding ding ding, because I have taught about saints as in relationship to others. So, for example, Saint Isidore, his wife Isabella was a saint. So, couples who are saints, married couples who become saints, or siblings who are saints. So, you have with the disciples, the apostles, Andrew and Peter. A number of them are siblings, James and John, right? So, I think that's important to know that we're members of families. Therese of Lisieux, her parents, I believe, are beatified. So holy people often are not in isolation. It's a
Mm-hmm.
family or a system that supports that holiness. I think that's very important to consider. So also she has a brother, right? Brothers and sisters could be no different.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an interesting reflection how much she loved her brother. And I wonder if because she was a sister, she was cloistered. And these folks, when these women were cloistered, they just never saw their family.
Yes, she was, and that is where she is credited with the Benedictine nuns, sort of starting that first order there.
Okay. And so you just, I don't, I won't, I'm reluctant to criticize that which I don't understand, but I've had, friends, women that I've worked with at NCEA in Washington that were cloistered. One of my former colleagues, she was a presentation sister. She was cloistered. She couldn't go to her own twin sister's wedding,
Mm.
really missed out on major life events. And I, I don't understand it. So I'm not going to, throw any darts at this, but kind of wondering, and that's there are still sisters who are cloistered, and I don't know what their life is like. The understanding that I have nominally is that their family becomes their religious community, but hopefully never at the expense of our our own families.
Right. Right.
So
The other thing that's
interesting.
interesting to me, and this is where, this is where Jamie would tell me that I am a convert and not a cradle Catholic because I actually question a lot of these things. But reading about her family, it talks about how she was born to very wealthy parents. And I often, and you hear that it's not uncommon for saints in years back, certainly popes, in years back to have come from very, very wealthy families. And I'm not questioning, and I feel bad even wondering, but I'm going to wonder anyway and say it out loud. Uh, does that have something to do with them being canonized? Was that part of them? You look at someone like Mother Teresa, who, no doubt, whether you are Catholic or not, she was a remarkable woman. And I'm not saying Saint Scholastica wasn't, but it seems like a lot of these very well known either saints or popes from 1,000, 1,500 years ago came from wealthy families. And
Yeah.
is it, I'm curious about that, and I don't know anything about it. But it seems interesting when you have wealthy popes. Are they canonizing their wealthy friends, families, kids? I don't know. I'm really
Yeah.
stretching here.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would say a couple things. Number one, studies kind of show when you look at religion and society that the wealthier a nation gets, the less religious it becomes. So you could almost give them credit because these are people of affluence and means. And so renouncing, to renounce the wealth is remarkable because they're taken care of. Their lifestyle is not, I don't want to say a struggle because that's not, but at the same time, maybe they're spiritually hungry, obviously, but their literal needs have been met. So they're renouncing their wealth, like St. Francis of Assisi, he was wealthy. But what I think you're pointing to is these are people in society that if you have wealth, there's no doubt you usually have power and influence.
Right.
So you're looking at their role in the church, and is it possible that they have a notable effect on communities because they're well known or their families are known? Quite possibly. And one of the criticisms about the saints is that too many of them are men or women in religious life because they have the groundswell to support the canonization process. So, yes, if you are from a community and then perhaps privilege or wealth, it's maybe that much more likely as opposed to the everyday farmer like Saint Isidore, and he was a peasant farmer. How many of those people do we, recognize for their incredible holiness? So I don't want to take away from Scholastica,
Right.
and I don't think you are. That's not your point. I think you're just raising questions, which is, I think there's a couple sides to it. So really interesting.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is interesting. I'll need to,
Fascinating.
I think
Yeah.
that maybe that'll be my focus for this year as I'm investigating or reading more or learning
Mm-hmm.
more about the saints is their background and
Yeah. What led them
do
to?
more than just the hour-long dive into Saint Scholastica I did today, but maybe really do a year-long study of the families where these
Yeah.
saints come from. Because you're right, having means, having wealth, and renouncing all of that is remarkable. It's not something we see as much today, and I would imagine it was when in societies where there is such a system of wealth versus non-wealth. One would say we have that still today, but it is fascinating that they would be able to do that. I just find it remarkable, for example, that you do have two saints. I mean, when I think of the saints, I think of these amazing, amazing, amazing holy people who are just a little bit more than human. And I know they're not, they're human, but they're saints. And to have two
Yeah.
from one family,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
seems incredible. But maybe
But
just
shouldn't it actually be the opposite, that great saints come from really holy families? Like, I mean, the way that our families, our parents shape us, it I know what you're saying, because it's the same with like great athletes. And I was watching this video, In Search of Greatness. We're showing it. I'm showing parts of it in class. Behind every great athlete is the parent who's totally selfless. Now, he or she may not be the great athlete, but Wayne Gretzky, what he says about his father and his father's insight into what it takes to be great, it's genius. So his dad might not have been the athlete, but Wayne Gretzky is not Wayne Gretzky without his dad. I really would say that. I don't think Barry Bonds is Barry Bonds. Now, Barry Bonds is controversial. Obviously, he didn't get in the Hall of Fame, but as an athlete, like without his father, there's so many of those examples. It's
okay.
interesting. So
Yeah, okay. So I'll buy into that because I can, that's a great analogy because you're right. Whether it's the spiritual genes or the athletic genes, whatever is in the DNA and the way the families were raised, that makes sense to me. I was just recently reading about Shannon Box, who soccer
yeah,
player, played at Notre
yeah,
Dame's being inducted into I believe it's the U.S. Soccer Hall of Fame. She's won
yes,
several gold medals, just a long time member of the U.S. national team. And her older sister was an Olympic softball player. And I was reading this article and I had the same name. And at first I thought that they had miswritten her first name because and I don't know if you pronounce it Jillian or Gillian, it's with a G. I would say Jillian, but I know someone with a G who spells it that way, and she goes
hmm,
by Gillian. So,
okay,
but it was Gillian Box, and I kept thinking, "Ooh, they mistype it in the article? They meant Shannon Box because they were talking about this Olympian." And then I go on to read the rest of the article, and no, it's Shannon's older sister. So same thing, right? Athletes sometimes you'll say, "Oh, what an athletic family." Well, I guess you're exactly right. Oh, what a holy family. Not different. Really, that analogy speaks to me.
yeah.
I got it.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I do. It's funny because the lesson where I teach about saints like Scholastica and Benedict is in my sports and spirituality class. So I left that out, but I talk about athletes who are siblings. You have the Mannings, you have Serena and Venus Williams, and then there's twins, the Bryan brothers. The greatest doubles team of all time. You have married couples who are great athletes. So it comes to mind because Mia Hamm was playing in the golf tournament this weekend. Now her sport
Fun.
was soccer, but her husband, Nomar Garcia Parras, you have married couples who are great athletes, and probably part of their draw to one another is that mutual understanding. And that'd be interesting. And, if faith is so important in your life, you're probably drawn. I mean, many people are drawn to another person for their faith, and yeah, parent to child and whatnot. So we are products of systems and systems of support, and that's a really good takeaway. Like, what are the systems of support that you're in? What do they value? And reflecting on that. And what have you inherited from your parents? Kim Clijsters was a great tennis player. Her dad was a soccer player. She's Belgian, outstanding soccer player, but her mom was a gymnast. And the photo that I show of her in class, she's literally doing the splits to reach like a shot. And it's cool because her flexibility, right, from her mother, the gymnast. So what do we inherit from our parents? Is it our faith? Is it, love of reading? Is it prayer, a commitment to prayer and holiness? That was certainly true in Mother Teresa's life. Her parents were very committed to giving to the poor. That's fairly well documented.
Hmm.
And my students are always a little bit like, oh, that's good. That's cool. That's good. But it shouldn't be a surprise, right?
Right. No, and as a parent, it's a great reminder to reflect on what am I giving to my children. We can certainly look at it as daughters, as sons and daughters. What have we inherited from our own parents? And boy, there is a lot to think about there. But I think also as parents, it's a good reflection of what are the values we're instilling in our own children? What are they going to take away from us? What is our legacy that will be passed on through them? And that might be that may be even a harder self-reflection for me than looking at what I inherited from my own parents. What am I passing
Mm,
on?
interesting. Right. Yeah.
And how do I change
Well,
that?
I love that
My kids are
question.
18 and 20, so in some ways it's not too late. It's never too late. There are still things that we can pass on to them, but I'd be I would be nervous had I thought of this 18 years ago, because I would think every day, what am I doing? What am I passing on? What am I
Mhm.
what are they seeing in me that I'm going to share
Yeah.
with them?
Yeah. Well,
Yikes.
it kind of comes back to last week. You were talking about self care, and my takeaway for this week is about investing in yourself. So I'm thinking about this question, and I'm thinking you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself. What am I passing on? But if you become your best self, you can only pass on that to your children. So there's the direct, I want them to know XYZ, but so much of it is modeling. So determining in your own life, yes, reading about the saints and knowing that that's part of something you're interested in, you know, naturally you're going to pass certain things on as well. So
And
I am a believer in investing in ourselves.
and that is truly, I think, all any parent wants for their child is for them to take care of themselves, right? We all, and
So
so we need
true.
to model that
Yes.
ourselves. As parents, we want our
Yes.
children to do it. We need to do it ourselves. And two, for them
Yeah.
to be their best selves. They don't have to be
Yeah.
perfect. No one is. They don't have to be the best athlete. They don't have to get straight A's. We just want them to be their best selves. And if that is all we want for our children, our students, our godchildren, our nieces, our nephews, really the young people we care about and love the most, then we do need to model that. And that is something we can all do. We can all invest in ourselves and just strive to be the best people we can be. And what an amazing, you're right, what an amazing role model even just that very simple thing would be. Okay, you made me
Great
feel
words of
better.
advice. Okay. Hey, I wanted to follow up before we sign off. We had talked about Notre Dame playing in the MLK Classic against Howard University
Hmm.
and HBCU. And some of our listeners might be familiar with the fact that there were bomb threats at a number of historically Black colleges and universities. So I'd like to pray for those communities as we celebrate Black History Month and recognize the contributions of Black Americans, but also work to make our country more inclusive, accepting, and supportive of Black Americans, their culture, their universities, et cetera. And that game really is a small step in support. So a friend who is close friends with Mike Bray told me that Coach Bray asked all the other schools in the ACC to add a game that is against an HBCU, and the others have not done it yet. So it doesn't mean that they will. And I'm not trying to pat Notre Dame on the back and be like, way to go Irish. But in this case, yes, I think it's way to go Irish. Notre Dame is working very hard on, I call it SJEI, social justice, equity, and inclusion.
Hmm.
And I say that because of a religious context, but DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Notre Dame's working really hard at that. And this is a small step toward it. So thank you, Coach Bray. And Haley, I'm so glad you were able to go. I do wish they'd had a little more publicity, but now we know about it and we can share the good word. So
Yeah, I agree. That was a tough couple days here, living in Annapolis. We have Howard University, we have Morgan State. There are HBCUs near us, and I have friends whose children go there, and of course, they were the ones I immediately thought of when there were these bomb threats, because that's the personal connection, right? Of knowing a child who's actually there. It's it's maddening, and there's so much to say about that. So probably not the time at the end of our podcast, but you're right to pray for understanding and healing, and those who are lost, because I can't imagine someone who is not lost would do such a thing. So for their families, for the children who are there, and then praying for those who made those threats. They need prayers as well. But gosh, what a tough time. I can't imagine being the parent of a child who was there. And I just, even as a resident of the area, found it very disturbing. So there's lots of healing that needs to take place there and across the country. So that's a great takeaway to keep praying.
Absolutely. So,
well, Anne, I hope you have a great week of self-care. I hope you find something that you can do that will be your best self, help you be your best self. I will continue working. Admission season is still in full swing. But I also have a couple fun things in mind for myself to do that self-care as well. So I will join you in that. But I
rise into that funk, and February we're in it. Days are getting longer. So for me personally, I take real delight, appreciation in that. Just having a few more hours of daylight each day.
It's so nice to not drive to work in the dark. Or come home in the dark, yes.
Exactly. Thank you. Yes.
Excellent. Well, have a great week.
Yeah. You too.
Bye-bye.